Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Recording Magic podcast, hosted here at StudioLDMM. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Burton Reid. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Pleasure to be
On
here.
this cold day.
Ish,
And it's
cold.
bitterly cold day.
But it's needed, There needs to be that contrast. Summer needs to feel like summer and winter must feel like winter.
Yeah. You
Can't
need
have
to
the same-
feel them. It's like music,
Yes.
A party song needs to sound like a party song, and a sad, depressed day song needs to sound sad and depressed.
It's exactly like that. That's how I feel.
Cool. So to everyone, this is our OG producer episode, our first OG producer episode, because Mr. Reid has years and years and years of experience actually in the SADC region in the production of music, both at live and studio capacity. So what I wanted to do was kind of like take your journey backwards. Because right now you're at quite a big point in terms of your journey, or a milestone, or I don't know, like a moment of celebration, because you're telling me that we finally got a chance to work on the production of Mr. Selaelo Selota's latest offering. So what I wanted to do was kind of like take it back in terms of this step, that this has happened now. So going back in terms of what led up to this point for you.
Yeah, okay. I actually think that's actually an important part of it because it will give you perspective. So I was born in Cape Town. Then I moved to Namibia when I was 5 years old. So that was in 1979. I grew up in a small town on the west coast of Namibia called Lüderitz. Population at that point was probably about 10,000. I think now it's up to about 12,000. Then my father used to send me all over Namibia to go to find good schools. So remember now, this apartheid era, you couldn't go to any school. You just had to go to the school of your designated
Wait,
race.
what caused you guys to leave South Africa?
That's actually a bit of a mystery to me. My father was a migrant worker, so he worked in the fishing industry. So when it's crayfish season in Lüderitz, he would work in Lüderitz. When it's whatever season in Cape Town, he would work there. That's about all I know. And then at some point, just in 1979, it was even the end of the year, like December, he just packed us up into a car and we left. But by that time, he'd already worked in Lüderitz for several years, on and off, during I think mainly in the crayfish season. So I haven't received an answer yet as to why we actually moved there, because as far as my childhood memory goes, we were actually living quite nicely in Kensington, in Cape Town. We had a huge house, as I can remember. The whole family and extended family lived like in the same house and outside. So yeah, I have no idea, but I don't like growing up in Lüderitz. Lüderitz is, for those who don't know, and it's a very unique place. It's a place in the desert. It's a coastal town. But it's not one of those tourist coastal towns. It's an industrial, well, I can't call it industrial. It's a fishing, mining.
Okay.
They just close to Lüderitz is where the, diamonds were discovered, just lying in the sand, in the dunes. And a town sprang up called Kolmanskop that actually became such a fast developing town. It actually had the first X-ray in Africa.
What?
And then it became a ghost town, like after the diamond.
Yeah. After the natural resources was sprung up.
The Germans left. And interestingly enough, I only found out recently that there were actually concentration camps in Lüderitz. So the Germans came and they ordered the extermination of the Namas and the Hereros. And the concentration camps in Namibia was there in Lüderitz. But obviously the Germans there never spoke about it. I only learned about it when a filmmaker actually started making a film about that era of our history, and then I found out about that. But just to get back to now the school thing. So
Yes.
Lüderitz didn't. I think at that time the school went up to standard 6, or grade 8. So my father was just sending me to this school and that school in the region, and eventually I got to Windhoek, the capital, to go to high school. And by that time, we could actually afford private school for me. So this was a multiracial private school And in the school, I auditioned for, so Namibia had a national youth choir. And I auditioned for the choir. I've always was interested in music, grew up with listening to my parents' LPs, listening to music, tinkering on a little Casio. My mother reminded me the other day, because I sent a video of me playing piano. Because she doesn't know how much I've progressed. And she reminded me, yeah, I bought you that first little Casio. So I was that dude. I got this Casio, and I was always breaking apart the radios in the house to figure out how do they work.
How to think.
So I was that guy, like anything electronic, I was interested and wanted to see how it works. So yeah, I interviewed for the audition for the National Youth Choir, and I got in. And this was actually my first entry into, I would say, semi-professional, organized music. So it was actually a very nice experience, because firstly, it was multiracial. Secondly, we got to go on choir camp. So you go to like a dam resort kind of thing, where it's a youth hostel, and you go, it's just like 2 weeks of rehearsing, singing, that's very, very, very nice. Yeah. And then we would have an annual tour. And it's on this tour that one of my friends and I decided together, this singing thing is nice, but while we're listening to our music in the bus, but there are people behind the performances who capture this music and make it so that the public can hear it. And that's more what we are interested in.
You wanted to see behind the veil.
Yes, because I got to the point where I actually got a solo part in one of our concert tours. But that still was the butterflies and the nervousness of performance. I thought, yeah, performance is nice, but I don't know if it's for me.
So you've got some pipes. You've got some pipes.
You know what? I actually started off as an alto when I was young, and then I moved up to a tenor. So yeah,
do you still sing a bit?
Whenever I sing now, people say, "Don't quit your day job."
Okay.
So this same guy that I'm talking about. So when I matriculated, those days, an academic career was the only path for you. You never even knew about music as a career or the arts as a career. So I went to the University of Cape Town. Actually studied a Bachelor of Business Science. But after the first year, I couldn't find a bursary. So the first year I studied on a loan, but I didn't want my parents to be burdened with this loan. So after the first year, when I couldn't get a bursary, this same friend that we were talking to that I was talking about on the bus actually reminded me that, hey man, what are you doing studying business? I've got a job for you here at the National Broadcasting Corporation. You know that you want to be in music. You want to be in sound. Just come to Windhoek, come to the Namibian National Broadcaster, and you'll get a job. We'll organize it for you. I said, yeah, man, I agree. And I went back to Windhoek, where I went to high school. I had to wait for the opportunity to arise. So I actually became a clerk at the bank, because those days, now we speak about nepotism, but sometimes nepotism helps you, because the bank manager in Luderitz told me, hey man, whenever you come to Windhoek and you want a job,
just like
I've been moved to Windhoek, so you knock on my door.
Got a bit of a banker look. I could see him being a banker, like telling me that your loan is denied.
So for 3 months, I was actually a bank teller. That's the most basic position.
So before all of this, you still didn't have any experience in terms of being in studio and live.
I didn't even know these things existed. My friend just told me, come to Windhoek, we'll organize you a job. So as I said, I went to worked at the bank for the 3 months, and whilst this was going on, I applied for the job, and then I got into the internship program, and that was in 1994, And then the rest is history, because once I hit there, that internship program, it was exactly my element. Like the technology, the way of things are being done. Now you must remember, this was now pre-internet era. So luckily for me, the NBC also had a very good library with all the books that you could need on production. So I started off in being an intern in television. So there you get to do, interviews, news broadcasts, sports, all the things that you do in TV. And then eventually they actually started a drama production division. So I got to work on actual films and drama productions. So I got to start doing post-production for movies, sound design, that kind of thing. But this was not all still in the analog era where you had to cut tapes.
And this is also in Namibia.
In Namibia,
which I guess as a South African, like, I don't think about I haven't really thought about the broadcast environment in other countries, especially in our neighboring countries. So it's quite amazing that they had quite a wealth of equipment, of knowledge, of books, of productions happening.
Just to put that into context, Namibia used to be just a province of South Africa, because Namibia used to be administered by South Africa.
This is some historic knowledge, guys. So let's take this in. I didn't know this, and now we're gonna.
Yeah, so it was when it was Southwest Africa, it was actually just another province of South Africa. So the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation actually just looked like the SABC. So I don't know if you've ever been to the regional offices of the SABC.
I have.
It's very similar. It was built with the same standards, same quality. It had the same equipment. You would just think you were at the SABC.
Yeah.
So luckily for me, when I entered the industry, all that high quality gear, the high levels of professionalism, everything was done according to BBC standards. The BBC was like the gold standard of radio and TV production at that time. That standards were, so even our training manuals were written by them. So I had a very good foundation in terms of, you had to go through an 18-month traineeship program before you could even do any live broadcast. So until that point, you just do your traineeship and you shadow the person who's already there, which I actually think is something that's missing today. That internship, but not an internship where you are guided by an experienced person.
The skills transfer.
Yes.
Yeah, from generation to generation.
Yes. And you don't... So the other thing that is happening now is also, once you eventually get transferred to the position of actually working, then you get left to your own. The person who was supposed to mentor you suddenly disappears. Whereas back then, even then when you started doing your own live broadcasts, the sound for the live broadcasts, your mentor was still there, guiding you through. There were still certain things that you weren't allowed. Like, for instance, we weren't allowed to touch an EQ, The mics were that good. The broadcast voices were specifically chosen for their voice quality. The microphones were chosen to suit that voice. So even you had a desk with a EQ section on, you were told, don't touch that EQ. Fix it with mic position. So everything had to be fixed. The distance of the mic, the position of the mic, the correct choice of mic, don't touch the EQ. It's only later when I started doing post-production, now you could play around with EQs and all the other things that were available on the day. So initially, a mixing console for broadcast was this fader mute. That's it. That was it. That's all that you were allowed to use. And you had to make the thing sound good based on that.
Wow.
So back to my story now. So that was in 1994. And then 2 years later, in 1996, the vacancy at the music production side became open. And when I realized that they're gonna fill the vacancy soon, I just find myself wangling my way, getting the studio keys, locking myself up in the music studio.
Yeah.
And that was another world that opened up, because I found old tapes of previous multi-track recordings. So those days we still recorded on 2-inch 24-channel tapes.
Yeah. We're gonna put a picture of that right here.
Yeah.
One delay, right?
And also on a studio tape machine, and I found the tapes. The technology that time, like to jump from TV to a music production studio. Now you had MIDI, you had keyboards, but it was the old stuff, not computer based sequences.
Yeah.
Like Roland sequences, like machines, almost like that Zoom that we are using now to record on.
Yeah.
Not a computer. There was no computer, but you had different machines that connected together with the tape machine. And so I found these tapes, and I just started mixing, and people started walking past and started hearing what's coming out of the studio, and they started, hey, that guy, yeah, you must give the job to that guy.
So you were in the right place at the right time, even though you stole the keys, you put yourself in.
I put myself in.
And now people were recognizing.
Because it was even two separate buildings, two separate suburbs that the two studios were in. So I used to basically be AWOL at the TV side.
Okay, now
The manager used to look for me, hey, where's Burton? No, Burton went to radio because the music studio was at radio. No, Burton is there. Oh, okay. So I'm preparing myself. Came interview time. The other people didn't stand a chance. Like,
oh man,
I was ready. Like, I'm going to make this mine.
yeah.
And yeah,
You had the eye of the tiger, essentially.
that's where I got into music in 1996 in a music production studio.
Okay.
But unfortunately now on the music side, there was no mentorship. So the persons who've been there before were no longer there. The studio had been standing idle for a long time. So they were trying to buy
those ghost towns in Namibia.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna put a picture of those ghost towns.
Haunting
Photography that was done of those places.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just check out Scope. So yes. So I basically now, I had a sound background, but not music. So I had to do the music thing all by myself. And now still we are pre-internet. So there's no YouTube to watch.
Just to bring you back, I wanted to just get what's your relationship with music? Like, because you spoke about how, going on tour when you were younger and wanting to be on the other side in terms of production. Was it your love of music or that took you to that kind of conclusion?
So yeah, to get back, so I'll answer that question now like this.
All right.
So now in the studio, I have all this great gear. I have all the best German microphones, whatever. But now I start recording, and I'm not getting the results that I hear on the albums that I've been listening to. So I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong? And as I was saying, this is pre-internet era, so I don't know actually what I'm doing in a music recording studio. I know the technology now,
Yeah.
The machines, how to operate them, but I'm just not getting the results. Until one day, a singer from Angola walks into the studio, and finally I hear, wow, so there's nothing wrong with the microphone, there's nothing wrong with the tape machine, there's nothing wrong with the mixer. I just haven't been recording the right artists.
Okay.
And then I realized, no, so it's all about performance, The technology can only do so much. So this put me on a path to say, no, I must explore more the musical side of things. So there was actually a drum kit and a piano in the studio. And I decided, okay, sorry, I'm gonna now start learning just basically how do these things work and how does it fit into the music and into the recording process. And I must admit that is the single biggest thing that I could have done, because what is it now? It's 2023, so next year will be 30 years for me in the business. No?
Wow.
I can tell you, probably only the last 5 years, I've been comfortable in consistently producing output of good quality that my clients will approve within like 2 or 3 edits. because my musicality has increased, and I can now understand what do you need to bring as the performer, and what are the limitations of the technology that I'm using, and where do the two come together. So I'm now in that space where I'm not mixing sound, I'm not recording sound. I'm recording music and I'm mixing music, and I'm focused on the music. How can I support the music? Not what can the mixer do, or what can the mic do, or what.
Okay.
For me now, the technology has become invisible. I focus solely just on the music. Like, how can I caption? How can I translate what the performer is doing to the audience? So that once I made that shift, things like I said, now things are going into into a flow, into a groove where I can consistently produce good output. And I attribute that purely to, as my level of musicianship has increased, because it also means that I can speak to a performer and they can speak to me, and I can interpret what they say based on the language that they are using in terms of music.
Yes.
And I translate that into what do I need to do technically to so you understand things in terms of harmony, in terms of melody, in terms of rhythm. Once you can understand those concepts, you can then translate that into to making better.
So you've kind of become like a Jedi master of recording music now.
Yes, like now where I am now, I actually don't want to go back to like movie production, that kind of post-production, podcast production, because I get those requests a lot. Like podcasts are popular now.
Okay,
I wanna just remain focused in music. So then through that process now of being in the studio, understanding all of that, after a while I got into the live music space.
Yeah.
And it is through that I met Selaelo in 2012 at the Windhoek International Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
I was doing the sound for the stage. I met him. By that time, I'd already moved to South Africa, to Joburg.
Okay.
Because I moved here in 2009. But it took a while before I could find any work. But it's once I met Selaelo, and he appreciated. You know, it was a funny thing. It's there was feedback on his guitar on stage.
Okay. Yeah.
And I asked him, what note is it? And he played me the note that's feeding back. So, oh no, that note is that frequency. I pulled that frequency out of the mix.
Yeah.
And suddenly the thing is clean. Hey, but now when I go back to South Africa, those engineers, I'm going to tell them those frequencies that they. Yeah. So then he told me, no,
Wow.
when we get back, he's gonna hook up with me, and then we must do something together. So I sneakily recorded his performance.
Okay.
In Namibia. Now he's very, very particular about his performances may not be recorded. So I was transparent and upfront with him, and I said, okay, I recorded your performance. Here it is. You know, you can leave me with a copy of it, or you can take it. But I would like to mix it for you and see if you can use it.
Okay.
In any way or shape or form, so that I can show you. You know, I also have studio skills, and I did that. And then that was in 2012. So then in 2014, he contacted me and said, "Hey, he's opening for Kenny G at the Dome. Can I come do the sound for him?" And since then we've toured together. Then it's been an amazing journey. So essentially, since then there's been like offshoots of people that he's introduced me to that have now also started using me. So I actually like attribute my career in South Africa like entirely to Selaelo Selota and my involvement with him. And then, as you mentioned at the beginning, now that has now come full circle. I finally went into the studio with him. And he's about to release an album this year that we've been working on. We are in the final stage.
Congratulations. That's big. You know, that song of his, that's a giant tune. If you don't know, we're gonna put the title of the song. You need to go find it. That's like almost for me, like it's almost like a national anthem. It's up there with me, like with The Crossing by Johnny Clegg,
Yes, yes.
and even Stimela by Hugh Masekela. You know, that's like one of those like
Pata Pata.
yeah, that song by Selaelo Selota is like it's a standard.
Yes.
It's a neo-traditional standard, you know. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that's been my long journey.
So if we can just zoom in now to what, other than, you know, your work with Selaelo Selota, what has been like a highlight in terms of an artist that you've worked with, where that it was the most memorable experience for you as a producer?
Okay, let me just add a little correction, because you keep using this word producer. I actually don't like to be labeled as such.
Okay.
Selaelo is a producer. I just learned in my sessions with Selaelo what proper producing is actually.
What is proper
Because
producing?
he has a ear.
Yeah.
He hears everything. He sees the whole picture, or hears the whole picture. I told him the other day, you hear forensically. You hear details underneath the details. Because he calls me and he says, "Hey, but I had this thing, you know, there's this noise. Can you remove it?"
Yeah.
And I'm listening closely and listening. Eventually, I finally say, "That thing is so buried," but he heard it. Once on a gig, a sound check, he's played a few notes on the guitar, and he told me, "Burton, come here." I go to the stage and say, "This Fender Twin reverb, the guitar amp that he uses, it looks like a Fender Twin, but I don't think the speakers are original." I go and look behind. The speakers are not original. I say, "How did you hear that?" I said, "No, I know the sound. When I hit this note, it must sound like this."
Yes.
So
yes,
that
yes.
guy is a producer. I am like a big picture person.
Okay.
You know, I've trained myself to sound-wise. When something doesn't sound right, I must immediately react. Like my head must, yo, what's happening? So I've made myself used to what good sound sounds like, so that when I do hear issues, I immediately react. But musically, I'm not that tuned in to the finer details of the music. A producer can hear every single note. You can play a chord and they will identify every single note in that chord. They will know rhythmically how do the patterns, even before you play them, how will they fit together. That for me is a producer. Like Quincy Jones was a producer, but Michael Jackson was the performer. Al Schmidt was the engineer. And together they formed this team, each of them focusing on the different levels, but the producer sees the overall picture and hears like the detail.
So what would you call yourself?
I'm an audio engineer, or you could call me an audio professional.
Okay.
Yes, when it comes to sound, that's my expertise. Definitely sound for music. So I do hear sound in a musical context, as I've already explained. But musically, yes, I don't yet, my ear is not yet trained for that level of detail that it produces. And at the same time, producers don't have the technical knowledge to achieve the results. That's why they work with engineers. So they can speak to you in musical terms. What do they hear? And you can then translate that with technically with what it needs to be.
Wow.
So you just, by improving your musical knowledge, you just get to that point faster where you understand what the producer is actually trying to tell you. Because sometimes they talk to you in colors, or they talk to you in...
It's true.
They talk to you in abstract language.
Yeah.
And you're trying to interpret what they are saying.
I mean, we experienced that with one delay in the studio the other day, where I was trying to describe to him how I want this guitar to sound, that I wanted to like carry you like on the, like a breeze on the ocean, and then like drop you lightly on the on the shore. And now you had to come back and be like,
what does it actually mean? No, that's exactly how producers.
So as an audio engineer, an audio Jedi,
yes, I'm
gonna like
Jedi.
Must make like electricity come out of my fingers as I say this. An audio Jedi. Like, so what has been that like one experience that sticks out for you?
Okay.
Yeah.
It was actually an international artist that I mixed for at the Joy of Jazz, when the Joy of Jazz was still in downtown. So I was doing the baseline stage, And there's this Jamaican American pianist called Monty Alexander.
Okay.
So his setup is very unique. He plays a jazz trio, and then he has a reggae band at the same time. And the music just crosses over. He will start the tune in jazz, and then the piano remains, and then the reggae band joins him.
Yeah.
And I love my reggae, man. I always like my parents always used to ask me, what is this music that's always frogs?
They don't know that you're skanking it easy.
I was skanking it easy. So just the way that reggae swings, man. I love the reggae swings hard, like the way bass players swing their bass in reggae. It's until I understood what swing was. I just knew I liked it. I didn't know what swing was, like the late feeling of the way they play reggae bass.
The way they come in just before or after, the place where you expect them to,
So that experience, and after that show, a lady actually came up to me and asked me if I could mentor her child, because the performance, and because of my understanding of, I listen to jazz, I listen to reggae, and the two things can come together, but you need to approach them very differently.
Yes.
And I just and this is the thing, is like most of the things are done by the performers. You don't have to impose yourself onto it. Just take what they are doing, use the correct techniques to capture what they are doing. Like you don't mic a jazz drum kit the same way you would mic a reggae drum kit. The jazz bass is played with the upright, double bass, where the reggae bass is.
It's like an electric.
The electric bass. Yeah. And the reggae bass is this dark sound. But all of that, that is the sound. I don't need to do don't touch the EQ.
on the reggae bass, isn't there like the strings literally like hanging off, not just dangling.
You know what? It's techniques. So these things I've also learned later. Where you play the bass on the fretboard, is here by the pickups.
Yeah, is
you can move to a bright or dark sound. So I didn't know these things, but I just knew the sound that was coming out is the right sound. For the reggae side, even in the sound that was coming out in the jazz side, it was the right sound. So it was just such an amazing experience. And I remember then at one point the reggae bassist played a solo, and the tone of the bass changed completely, appropriate for the solo. And once again, I didn't have to do anything, and it's just the way that the guy played. And I became aware of this, trust the performers. They actually. They've perfected their techniques over the years, and this is my biggest, if I may use this platform for
your biggest gripe.
For a gripe.
This is what grinds his gears.
and not just me, but the other performers.
Yeah.
Sound engineers don't respect their craft and their ear, so they're always trying to impose what they think and what sound engineers think it should sound like. Whereas the bassist knows what he should sound like. The drummer knows, the guitarist knows. If I was explaining to you about Selaelo's ears. So what I really appreciate thus far in my career is I've been able to work with very high caliber artists, and I've come to respect their ears. And I try not to be an obstacle in their sound. So I try to, my focus is always, can I just take that sound and give it to the audience? The way that we were hearing things in the rehearsal, can we just give that to the audience that same way, and I don't come with, oh no, I think it should sound like this, or it should sound like that. Because I was on tour with TKZ and with Cabello, and that's a completely different sound, but I also love Kwaito. So...
these are legendary artists.
So I understand. No, that energy that when they open a gig, it's fire.
Yeah.
So now I can't think of their gig in terms of the way I mix Selaelo. I must take that fire and give that fire to the audience. I actually, my very first 2 albums that I recorded, the one was a rock, and the second one was a heavy metal album. So I learned very early in my career that there are different sounds,
Yeah.
you have to become. So what I used to do was, if I'd known this week I'm going to record rock, a week before that is all I'm listening to.
Yeah, it's just like
immerse myself
you
into-
like become like a method actor. That's just like you probably have like black makeup under your eye, and then you're wearing like torn t-shirts and smoking like 20 cigarettes or something.
And so at the same time, I did symphony orchestra.
Yeah.
I did choirs, like straight choir, where you just have two mics in the theater hanging to capture that.
Mm.
And it all boils down to, when you are there. So let's forget the PA and the mics and whatever. When you are there, there's a certain emotion that's evoked when you are listening to the performance. So you must then transfer that emotion. If you are capturing it on the recording, or when there's a PA system, to transfer that emotion to the PA. But at the end of the day, whether it's symphony, whether it's choir, whether it's heavy metal, whether it's kwaito, whether it's hip hop, whatever genre, reggae, all of those things evoke a certain emotion in me when I listen to them. I love all music, so that emotion, that feel, so even that edginess you feel when you hear that metal,
Yeah.
you want to get that edginess, out there. So that's been my main focus now, is how to translate the emotion of the performance
Into
to the audience.
Yeah. So I wanted to just come back and touch on your relationship with the audience, especially from both sides, from a studio creating the album. What's your relationship there with the person who's going to listen at the end of the day? And in terms of a live setup, then what is your relationship with the audience at the venue?
A live thing is usually easier to judge, so because you are literally looking at the way that the audience is reacting to what's happening on stage. If they are not engaging, then there's something is wrong, either with the performance or with the sound. And it does happen that you can see you've lost the audience. Then something is wrong. So it's a whole lot easier because there's nothing as nice like when you do shows at Sun Arena in Pretoria. It's a 7,000 seater, and the mixing position is up there, say about 3/4 into the audience, on the third tier of the audience. So the audience is on the floor, and there's a second tier, then the third tier, but there's still a fourth above you. So it's almost like you're inside the audience, and you could feel their energy. And there's nothing nice as nice as it's happening on stage, and you can feel that the audience is feeling it. And that's the point where you want to get to. With an album, it's very tough. You have to trust the producer. So the producer, and this is something else that I'm not that skilled in. The producer knows the market that he's producing for. So he knows what people want to hear. If this is supposed to be a radio song, this is what people want to hear on the radio. If this is supposed to be a song for people in the village, this is what their ear is like. I haven't lived here long enough to know the nuances of that, especially in South Africa. Maybe in Namibia, I would be better at being able to read that. So you trust the producer to know. But again, if there isn't such a person, then you have to trust that if I'm feeling it, then someone else will. And that's the important. At the very least, I must feel then, like when I play the music in my car, I must feel something wherever I play the music. Then you hope, probably because I listen to a lot of music that other people listen to.
Yeah.
So surely if I'm feeling it, then someone else hopefully will also feel it. Like if I'm turned off by it, then how can I expect
so in those situations, like what you're in the studio and you see that something's not going right in something that falls a little bit outside of your role as an audio engineer, how do you communicate that, or how easy is it to communicate that?
I'll always try and provide inputs. If I hear something, I'll ask, maybe can we try it like this, or can you try it like that? And then it will be tried and it will be either kept or it will be thrown out. So, but I don't keep quiet in the studio.
Sounded like it is.
If I hear something, because also performers, especially if you get to where the artist or the producer is also the artist. The old school of doing things was there used to be an artist and then there used to be a separate producer where the producer is literally in charge of quality control.
Okay.
And then there's no conflict because you can, when the artist is also the producer, there's two egos that you are working with.
Right.
But essentially, in the old days, record companies used to have a producer because they know the artists have their ego. They will do things to please their sense of art, but it won't necessarily work when you're producing a commercial album. But when you do get to work with artists who are also producers, then they trust the engineer actually to give them feedback in terms of does this work or doesn't this work. Even just in terms of, was my trumpet on pitch? How was my tonality?
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than
Now you have to
getting home and then listening to your project for the first time. Hey, but God, the pitch there, it's a bit off, eh? So when I'm in the studio, the phone is on flight mode. I'm listening to every single note.
Yeah.
I must be able, when you ask me an opinion, I must be able to give you an opinion. I see so many times people are in studio and they get distracted and they only hear things afterwards, and then they have to come back and fix them. So I'd like, if someone asks me, is this a good take? Because I listen to the emotion of the take, as well as the technicality of the take. Sometimes it's technical, but the emotion isn't there. Sometimes the emotion is there, and there's something technical that's a little bit off that can be fixed. Fix it in the mix, but the emotion was there, and then you keep that take. So that's I try and be present in the studio too.
Do you find yourself to be a perfectionist?
I've learned a new level of perfectionism from Selaelo, so now I don't know anymore. I thought I was a perfectionist. My wife just says, no, you have OCD.
Bro, a lot of geniuses OCD. So the thing I wanted to come to was that what have been the times when things have gone completely wrong, both from a live perspective and a studio perspective? Can you share any stories around?
Oh, no. Things have gone wrong.
Like you had a performance and there's just something you can't solve. It's just like the artist, they're on stage and, there's things that you just have to live with.
The thing that usually happens, and it happens too frequently these days, is people underestimate the level of quality that's required. Professional audio quality. There's too much gear that's flooded the market that is not of the right standard. And so unfortunately, we do still get to gigs where you've provided a technical rider, but when you get there, there's nothing.
There's a discrepancy.
And then the question usually I get asked is, can we make this work?
A technical, please explain to the people at home what a technical rider is, because I think, this is also a term I learned very late in my life. But if you could give us.
So a technical rider is basically a document that spells out exactly where will my performers be on stage, what will they require in terms of musical instruments and audio equipment, and then what do I require in terms of what mixer I want to mix on, what PA system do I expect to hear. So I give like a minimum specification of what PA system you must provide. I don't want to. There are certain PA systems that are just not cutting it. So that is a technical rider. So it's a complete detailed document that gives the exact specifications of the equipment that is needed for our performance. And the technical rider will normally be for the biggest kind of event that we expect to encounter. So the only discussion then with the person who stages the event is how do you scale it down to the specific event that they are hosting.
And also on your technical rider, you can put that you only want the blue sour worms. That's all. The artist wants blue sour worms, 12 bottles of Aquel still water that have been half poured out. You can get that specific.
So that part of the rider we call the hospitality rider.
Rider.
So the technical is normally the sound and the lights and on video if you have, and then you add the hospitality in terms of what the artist comforts.
Yeah.
It's even my own comfort.
Your own comfort.
Yes.
So you've spoken about we're just going into the situations where there's just been a disaster on stage, and just wanted to get one of those stories.
I don't want to name names.
You don't have to put a name. You can just say artist A, or you'll call them Henry for now.
No, I'm basically, even recently, I was very disappointed. We had a performance where the venue wouldn't allow the drums to be moved from behind the screen. In churches, they perform with the drums behind a glass, plexiglass screen. Now, in certain performances that works, but in jazz performances, the musicians depend on that interaction, the visual and the sound, but they don't want to necessarily hear the sound from speakers. They want to hear the sound acoustically. You want to see the pianist's fingers hit the keys, the drummer's stick hit the heads. It became very difficult, and people were actually off. Like people who've been performing tightly for years were actually rhythmically off because they couldn't get the visual and the audio cues. And
the environment had changed.
Yes, it just threw everybody off, and it just made for a very subpar performance. And there was actually very little that I could do, other than just pumping everything loudly on stage. But the venue was also very difficult. So all in all, it's one of the few times where when the show was done, I wanted to hide because I knew people were going to come up to me and ask me, what's going on? I hate that question. And plus now the whole thing went late because the changeover from each performance became very long because everyone is now struggling to just get some kind of sound on stage for their artists to be able to perform. So things that were supposed to take 15 minutes ended up taking an hour. So the gig was supposed to be from 3 till 10. I left at 2:30 that morning, and the headliner hadn't performed yet. That's how long it was. But I also just became tired, and we had an early flight out. So I thought, nah. So that kind of situation,
that's bad. So that is an actual real life thing that happened.
Yes, it's where you get to the point where now the technical foundation isn't there, so I can't actually do anything to rescue. I mean, I've done better with less, but the less, at least, 3 people, maybe the drum kit wasn't the biggest, but they were close to each other.
Rhythmically, it was tight.
Yeah, they could be tight. That studio-wise, really, you're so much in control of what you are doing that you really don't have situations, other than people getting frustrated if something isn't performed correctly. It's still not there. You have to come back tomorrow. Your studio is expensive. So
I mean, you were pretty punctual today. You were here 30 minutes before we were due to start. So I know how artists can be. So have you had to contend with some of those issues around conduct?
All the time. So that is a part. So the thing of being in control of what you are in control of. I'm always punctual. I didn't realize it wasn't a thing for many people.
Especially nowadays,
even my Uber drivers never wait for me. I wait for them. So the other morning when I went to the airport, early in the morning, 5:30, I had to leave, and the Uber driver came. I'm waiting outside now with my bags, but I'm not. It's maybe they think it's like a passive aggressive thing, but no. I'm ready for you.
Yeah.
And the guy asked me, yo, so what's your secret? I told him, no, I'm always 15 minutes earlier than what I'm supposed to be at, when I'm supposed to be at a place. So if you tell me you're coming to fetch me at 6, I'll be waiting outside my gate from 10 to 6 for you. You don't have to come and hoots at my gate. That guy's mind was so blown by this concept that you could actually make a decision to always be on time and then be on time. So yeah, it's one of my things. And you know what it allows me to do is, it's like for a gig, if I'm early and I can sort out all my like housekeeping, I can call it, and like set up the console, set up everything, do sound check, and then just have a quiet moment to visualize the performance. You know, this is going to be the opening. This is going to be the sound that I want to hear. And hopefully then the audience will react, and then the adrenaline will come pouring in it. You know, just that.
Yeah.
Instead of running around and up to the last minute, you're still trying to fix something. I don't
like you get ahead of things.
Yes.
Get ahead of things.
So my thing is always get to a place, then relax, wait, and do the thing that you need to do. And then I'm always the first. Once it's done, like out of there.
First to leave. You're like, I got you, Andy. I'm going early. So these are more of those Jedi ways of.
If you tell me the session starts at 10, or normally our session starts at 10, I will be there at 8 to prepare. And then I get very upset, like with Selaelo. Like I get there at 9, and then he's already there at 9. So you see, this is where now.
Now it's two Jedi masters getting there at the same time.
Like no, I can't allow this to happen. I must be a little bit earlier than him. So this is where the fortunate thing, as I've said, about eventually finding the right people to work with. You share like similar values in terms of professionalism. And yeah, both of us see it, unfortunately, that not all the members you have that thing and that mindset of the session is booked from 10. It doesn't mean arrive at 10. It means we want to start the session at 10, you know? That no. So, but I can only control the way I approach that aspect of my life. So yeah.
So you were speaking earlier. Actually, the thing I want to come back to is that when we met a while ago, you were telling me about your system in terms of drafts when you are, doing audio engineering or producing for an artist, that you have a certain you've created ways to kind of like make the yes come quicker in terms of what they hear and them approving what you have worked on.
Actually, this is a very important question. So it's a very important technique that I think will help a lot of producers. So the technique basically is that you calibrate your studio monitors to be at a certain volume. So all your decisions are made at that volume. So always when you work at that volume. The same way, then whichever other listening environment that you listen to the music while you are in production. Because normally we're in the studio, then we take it to maybe listening on your phone through your headphones or earbuds. You listen in the car. All of those volumes remain consistently the same when I'm listening to the music. So that all decisions are informed by that volume that I'm listening to the music at. That technique has allowed me to consistently produce, because of the way that the human ear works. We hear frequencies differently when things are loud and when things are soft. So when you listen to things softly, treble and bass is underemphasized. So then you tend to overcompensate by adding more treble, more bass. But when you listen to things loudly, treble and bass is overemphasized. So now you want to make it softer. So there's somewhere in between where there's a balance between bass, mids, and treble, the way our ear hears it. And it's at that level where you want to make your decisions in terms of how bright is something, how much low end does this production require. So yeah, my volume on my audio interface remains at on point. It never changes.
Yeah.
It also means that if I reference what I'm doing currently to what's currently on YouTube, what's on Spotify, what's on iTunes, I don't continually change the volume between YouTube and iTunes, and everything gets listened to at that volume, so that I know that when something is off in my mix, it means that when I compare it to what's playing on iTunes, it must sound similar. I mustn't reach for
match.
I mustn't reach for the volume control or the EQ. It means that I must go. If it's not similar, I must fix it. I must go back to the mix. And fix
it. Takes a lot of discipline.
Yes. I've learned this technique from a mastering engineer. Unfortunately, you need an actual sound level meter if you want to accurately calibrate your monitors. It's something also that they do in movies when they mix movies. The movie monitors in the theater, because they actually mix the movie, the final mix, they do it in an actual movie theater in a small studio. Those monitors are calibrated to measure 80 dB SPL C-weighted for a certain input reference level. So say you input minus 18, I think, dB full scale, and then you measure with a SPL meter the output. Because I've done this when I still used to own an SPL meter, I did it on my particular monitor. I've been using the same monitor since 2010.
Okay.
I now know more or less what that level is just based on my ear, how loud it is supposed to be. So yeah, my car's radio is always on 20. My video monitors is always on minus 15.
This is some other level. This is where the OCD comes in.
You know, but it helps because one of the things with artists, you have to get into their ear to hear what they're hearing, so that when they explain something to you, then you know, that's what you mean. So even now with this project, when I started with Selaelo, and I've done it with other artists as well, I get into your car. I ask you, where do you listen to your mixes? No, I listen at home. Okay, I'll come to your house. I'll come and listen to what you are hearing. Or if you say, no, I listen in my car, I'll get into your car and I'll come and listen. Okay, what are you hearing? The same thing when my drummer, for a long time, my drummer is telling me things during the live performance that, what is this guy hearing? Because I'm hearing something different. Then one day I took his earbuds that he uses, his in-ears, and I went and listened. So this is what you are hearing. Okay, now I know.
Okay.
Now our workflow is a lot quicker because now I know exactly what he's hearing.
Yeah.
And then what I need to adjust to get him to hear the way that he wants to hear the bands. So yeah, it helps because once I told Selaelo, so how do you listen to? I told, okay, in your car, just make everything flat. Don't play your own music. Play someone else's music that you know.
Yeah.
He's produced a lot of albums, so even play one of them, and then immediately switch back to what we are doing currently. If you are feeling immediately there's something bothering you, then we know, okay, we need to work on the mix. And from there now forward, he always listens to the music now on that same setting. And now we're
cooking with gas.
now the notes are just few.
Yeah.
To get the mix to the.
So I wanted to come to Downtown Studios.
Yeah.
So this is a place I only discovered, very recently, as recent as actually, yes, this year. Because there's a young artist. His name is Pelelani Tembu, and he plays jazz. So I basically I've dedicated part of a lot of my time to following him around and documenting what he's doing, and he was recording actually his first single called Malaiko at Downtown Studios. So when I walked in there, it just felt like I've come into the holy place of
another world.
Yeah, man. So tell us about Downtown Studios and your relationship with it.
So I've recently completed my training at Downtown so that I'm allowed to now work there as a freelancer. So I'm actually listed now on their website as a freelancer that you are able to book, because they only allow certified freelancers to work at Downtown. So I haven't actually been fortunate enough yet to have a session in Downtown, because when we were actually supposed to record Selaelo's album at Downtown, but that was just at the start of load shedding, and they didn't install the generator yet.
Okay.
So at that time it was hectic. We could only get, I think, 4 hours in the day, but like split between various times of the days to actually, and that couldn't work. You need like at least a continuous 8 hours, you know, to in the studio to work. So we couldn't actually do the session, and since then we found other studios, you know, to record in. So I'm still waiting for that opportunity, because I'm like you know, it is the place where the magic used to happen.
Yeah.
So I would love to just be able to
Maybe you're
find
gonna
that
bring the
artist.
magic back.
Yes, I actually have someone lined up who would love to go. It's a Christian hip hop artist, and he told me, "Oh, it's the only place you asked him to go. He wants that SSCAL sound." So I said, "No, I'm in."
So now you know with the whole thing of load shedding, and for if you're listening to this like 10 years into the future and you don't know what load shedding is, this weird time in South Africa where our power infrastructure was off and people only had electricity at certain times of the day. And how as an audio engineer and someone who's working with electricity powered things, how has that changed your work?
Other than curtailing my hours, because live events have always run on generators, regardless of load shedding or not. It's a requirement for when you do an event in a public space, that the lights must always be on. So the live events always runs off generators. So it hasn't really affected that side.
I guess live events of a certain scale.
Fortunately, I only do live events.
See, masters, Jedi, as I said earlier, like levels.
And because I mix from home, I've just adopted my what I always try to do is to mix first thing in the morning. So I wake up, have coffee, and then whatever, I try and do my first song by 10. So if load shedding allows, and if it doesn't, then you just work around it. But definitely, say if load shedding is 4 to 6, then my day ends at 4, because I don't get into, I just feel like I produce better results in the morning. So I'm not one of those work all night. I have a very, like 4 hours of intense work. Especially when it comes to music mixing. Then the ears get tired. So whatever else,
fatigue.
Any decisions you make after that is influenced by ear fatigue. You're gonna redo it tomorrow, so this is I'll stop. So I just decided, instead of investing now in the backup power and in generators and whatever, load shedding is only 2 hours. Sometimes it's 4 hours. Then I just work around it, and luckily clients have also begun to understand that if you ask me now to do an edit and I tell you we're currently in load shedding, I can do it tomorrow. It's
and like people understand it's a shared experience.
I've actually, because the thing is that it's expensive, and then you're gonna have to pass those costs on to, like, if you want to do it properly, it's an expensive exercise to have backup power, and really we can, or I can at least, schedule around. I'm actually more upset about load shedding affecting my cooking time than my studio time.
So you're not only cooking in the studio, you're cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah, no.
And we actually we're in load shedding right now as we're recording this in this podcast. So if you want to come record your podcast in load shedding, we are here. We've got the setup. So I wanted to, as we're closing off now, to just touch on two things. And okay, there's a siren going. Can you hear the siren? Okay, so it's a huge fire truck. I just wanted to touch on, first, being starstruck. Have you ever found yourself being starstruck? And then after that, we're going to go into now the future, and that's looking at your son works with music and how you found that kind of relationship to be. So let's start off with the starstruck part. Have you ever been starstruck, or is there an artist you think you're gonna work with where you're gonna have to first get over yourself before you work with them?
I can definitely tell you, I'm not that guy. I love music, but I separate the people from the music. So I'm pretty sure I will meet some of my favorite musicians on the street, and I won't even know it's them, because I'm not that focused on people. It's the artists or the music.
So you're not canceling anybody. You know how the mixture of the artists, their life, you know.
I get into trouble for that, but I don't cancel anyone. Like, there's the art remains. So I'm not one of those.
Okay.
And then the other question about
So now, because your son, I mean, he's making a totally different kind of music. It's a new time, new technology, you know, different kinds of team setups, a different kind of approach to everything. But how has that been, you know, because it's almost like you've passed this thing on to him.
You know, I've passed this thing on to him almost unknowingly. He's a private operator. So I find him making his own music, spending a lot of time on it. But I must admit, I haven't actually heard it. The bits that I've heard, I've realized it's a modern style of music that I don't really understand. And I've never been into popular culture. So I actually don't know what's happening in the world of music anymore. I've never watched your MTVs and your Channel O's and those channels. I stopped listening to the radio. But what I do know is that our parents felt exactly that way when we started listening to Brenda Fassie and Soul Brothers and Bob Marley. I was like just explaining to you, my parents didn't understand this reggae music that I was listening to. So things evolve, and there's space for everyone to create. And the important thing is to encourage people to remain creative, even if you don't understand. And I feel that when the time is right, you'll come to me and seek my input. Because like I'm learning to play keys, and I work outside in my cottage. He's in his bedroom.
Yes.
Now sometimes I hear something that I'm like, oh man, I can just put some keys. No. But then when I'm playing some keys that he likes, then he comes and listens. So what's that? What are you doing? So it's like, hey, I know eventually.
I guess he'll soften over time. I guess they say that when the student is ready, the master will appear, you know.
So eventually,
So in terms of like discussions around music, like,
it's just general discussions about the state of the industry. What I do, you know, obviously the advice in terms of protecting your copyright, registering your music, commercializing your monetizing, you know, don't just give someone a beat, sell it to them, you know, that kind of thing. Those conversations. And also always the kids never got to choose the music that we listen to in the car. That's my choice. So they are heavily influenced. Whether, you know, the thing about music is you only realize later how much your parents' choice of music.
I'm definitely, my dad's choice of music made me the musician I am today. Actually, I mean, those influences I think we unconsciously actually get influenced by the music that the people who raise us listen to. So I wanted to just now kind of like you speaking to yourself 20 years ago or 30 years ago, as it were, or speaking to someone who is wanting to be you at a certain point. What bits or pearls of wisdom would you be able to give them just to make their journey that much more effective?
You know, I touched on this in the beginning. Despite the internet age, I still think people are missing internships and mentorship. It is the number one thing. I think people now, they go to school and they jump straight into a job opportunity where they get left to their own devices because they're qualified. So you must be able to do the job. I think that if possible, find yourself. It's almost like a businessman being a sole proprietor, but you find yourself a director, a business advisor to advise you. You do your own thing, but there's someone just looking over your shoulder who can just guide you with someone who's done this before with experience and knowledge. I think that concept is very important in audio production, or just in production in general, because the it's not just technical. This is the thing with music. It's not just technical, it's also relationships and how you interact with musicians. It's like something that you have to learn how to understand them, how to interact with them, and how to interpret what they are trying to tell you. And then, of course, just the techniques. I mentioned earlier, like, I only feel now in the last 5 years that I can produce consistent output. I strongly believe if I had on the music side worked under someone like Selaelo from the very beginning, I would have reached there in 10 years.
Faster. So that mentorship excels your progress.
I believe that is still the only way. So a big studio like Downtown, for instance, currently they don't have a permanently employed engineer. So we've broken the cycle now. So you want to come into a place where there's someone who's been there for 10 years, who knows the place, who knows the music, who knows the clients, and then you come in and you work with that person for at least a good 2 years before you even do your own session. But now people are coming from school into Downtown, straight do your own session within 3 months. That part of it. So that is a part that I would like and I am actually actively looking for people that I can now, when I go into a session, especially if someone pre-books me like sufficient time ahead, I'm gonna take someone with me into the studio as an assistant. So the relationship used to be there was an assistant engineer and an engineer, and eventually the assistant engineer takes over from the engineer, but the engineer is still there. He's just working on another project in the same studio or in the same studio complex. It's not like the engineer disappears. So this is also not what I what I want is where you can only move into the chair when the other one retires, because this is also what tends to happen in our industry, especially in the live event side. You have truck loaders and offloaders. No, so you have hands. I always say that I have intelligent hands, and then I have operators. People remain intelligent hands for too long in the live events. They don't get moved up to become the operator, because they literally can only move in that space when the operator retires or has moved on to another company. And that should also not happen. The people who are the intelligent hands must be allowed to move into the space of operation and still be guided by the main experienced operator and work together and be given the opportunities to fail and to learn.
There must be progression.
Yes. I see too long, after 10 years, you still find, no, but this guy is still just offloading shunts. He hasn't moved. He hasn't grown. So that
maybe it says that points to the culture and like kind of like the way the system has not evolved in a sense. Or do you feel like it used to be that way and it just isn't anymore, in terms of people, like the individual being cognizant, but also the company that they're working for being cognizant?
Yes, it's a culture which is I think it's actually a bit unique to South Africa. It needs to change, where there actually needs to be a mind shift within company owners to actually make it. They always put the onus on the people at the bottom to work their way up, but they don't have a clear path on how you can actually work your way up. Then it becomes almost like, but you're not taking initiative. So I don't believe that. I believe that I, as a senior person, must actually make a conscious decision and say, for this particular person, this is how I want to assist them to get to that point quick, as fast as possible. not just leave it up to them to what are they supposed to do to work. Not everybody comes from a culture of being, how is the word, to have the confidence to put your hand up and say, yeah, I can now do X, Y, and Z. So, and then there's the reverse, where people are too confident and get thrown into the big event when they are not ready to. Like I had an international gig where somebody was brought in because we couldn't, like when the World Cup was in the UAE, in Qatar. A lot of the freelancers went that side.
Oh.
So we had a gig, and we were struggling to find an engineer, and then eventually we found one to do monitors. But he wasn't ready. He shouldn't have accepted a gig, but in his head he was.
A bit of more than he could chew.
So it ended up actually becoming a nightmare, kind of an event. But I would just love to see people not having to take 20 years to get to where I am now. It can definitely happen faster, but it can also not happen in 2 years. That is, but it can happen in 10 years. It's a more realistic, because also in terms of your human relations and how you interact with people, you gain maturity, how to deal with people, how to deal with difficult people, how to deal with artist egos, and not get frustrated by them or become
like beyond the textbooks. There's some like interpersonal things that have to be, some emotional intelligence and that has to be there.
That has to be there. That has to happen.
So, just in closing, I just wanted to find out about your bigger, like when you're looking at the future now that you've become this audio engineering Jedi, like what are some things that you're looking forward to, or some other levels that you want to go to in what you're doing?
Okay, so I was fortunate to get a grant from National Arts Council during the COVID time. There was this presidential employment stimulus program. I have this company, Reid Music Productions, which I actually envisage as a record label. And through that grant, I was able to produce a Tsonga musical project. The link is actually in the bio that I gave you. You must check out this guy.
I'll put the link in the...
Please check out Galien Goveni on Bandcamp, The Echoes of Magobe. It's a Tsonga music project. Man, the guy is the bass player in Selaelo's band also. But he is the most amazing musician and person. And I would like, somehow to see the two of us doing things together. He's an artist now signed to my label as a publisher. And I'd like to see what I can do, because he would like to be in the theater space. He loves martial arts. He wants to make a movie. Jackie Chan is one of his heroes. He wants to direct, star, write the score, all of that.
We should let him do it. I want to see this. I want to see this personally.
So, man, you guys must check out this guy, Galien Goveni. Check out his YouTube page. Check out his Facebook page. He's also a one-man band. He plays drums, keys, bass at the same time. You must check this out. So I wanna see how the two of us, what we can do creatively together. So yeah, watch this space. We have some exciting things lined up. And check out the album, The Echoes of Magobe, on Bandcamp. So just another piece of advice from my side. I decided specifically just to release on Bandcamp because I feel that all the other platforms, he's just creating content for them. But unless you're selling millions or streaming millions, you don't get much money from it. Bandcamp is a platform for independent artists. If you sell a CD for $10, they take $1, you get $9. Boom. It's
straight and simple.
So if you can promote your music and people can buy your music, They have Bandcamp Fridays where they actually give you 100% of the sales. They don't take anything. It's normally at the end of the month, the last Friday of the month. I've decided to stay away from the other streaming. Yeah,
you want to almost like kind of like have ownership in the platforms,
Yeah.
in a way.
So the more you can sell, the more money you make on Bandcamp, and you can sell physical merchandise. So we have CDs. You can sell the CD. You can sell T-shirts, Gaps, whatever you.
So guys, Mr. Reid is plugging you guys. Like if you want to keep more money in your pockets. Not Bandcamp is not sponsoring this, even though your Bandcamp, holla at your boy. We got you here on Recording Magic. We can work something out. But yeah, that's amazing advice. Even for me personally as an artist, that because I found that it is a thing of creating content for platforms, and that how there's always that advice to say that use those platforms, but use it to guide people to place spaces that you own more of, so that you can receive more of the return.
Yes, that's exactly the point. So, Gali is on YouTube, but the actual album is for now, until somebody tells me, because I've actually decided, if someone tells me, but I can only listen to music on my phone because remember now, Bandcamp is just an app also. You can listen to music wherever. But I will give you a physical CD, or I will give you a digital download. I will send you the files if you can, for some reason, cannot access the music on Bandcamp. But so far, that hasn't happened.
Okay.
So it can just be done in addition to the other platforms that you are on. But try and direct your sales to, so if someone wants to buy, because people pay for, like I pay for Spotify.
Yeah.
It's whatever,
60 Rand.
A month, I care. But I wouldn't buy music on iTunes store, the Apple Music store. I would go buy music on Bandcamp.
Okay.
Because I know the artist gets 80% of the revenue of that sale. So that's the difference between Bandcamp and the other streaming. So it's just another revenue channel for you where you actually get the most.
Thank you for that, and thank you for joining us on this.
It's a big pleasure
for sharing this very precious knowledge here with us on Recording Magic. And we'll be looking out for everything that you're creating, and we hope to have you on here again. Maybe with some more of your artists from Reid Music.
Yes, I'm hoping to get more artists. First, we must do something with Gali.
Definitely, let's do something
do
with Gali.
One thing at a time.
Please, let's have him here as our space, even performing, because we also host like live performances here.
He would love to come here.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
You know what? I was actually telling him, because the parallels, like me, essentially, I consider myself to be a boy from Ludritz, where I grew up. I discount the Cape Town, and he's from Guyana.
Yeah.
So and then we met here.
It's just like these two different worlds connecting.
Immediately, we were like, we must do something together. So
this is all divinely orchestrated.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Please, we're going to share notes from the show in the description, and please follow us for more Recording Magic conversations where we speak to people who are involved in recording and looking at both the spiritual and lived experiences of these recording masters in Recording Magic. Thank you very much, and see you soon.